we're going to be bringing on our first guest, Michael Caney. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at Highway. They've recently had quite a bit of news, and so Michael, super excited to have you on the show.
It's good to see you, man. How are you?
Woo, we're staying busy. It's hump day, but super excited. And I think you all have been staying busy. So we've got two big pieces of news here. The first one is you have secured a strategic growth equity investment led by FTV Capital. Congratulations on the raise. Let's talk about, give us some backstory and what it means.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about fundraising, there's a couple different ways to think about it. One way is definitely the venture route, right, where you're kind of asking companies to bet on your vision, on your future, and where you want to go. And the second piece is a private equity or growth equity investment. What was really important to Highway early was we said, hey, if we ever take on investment, it needs to be with a partner that allows us to stay true to our values, that doesn't try to control us and tell us that we need to go sell against freight brokers or do something different. And so I think what's really important for the public to know is that Highway was and is a profitable company, right? And so when we decided to take on a growth equity investment, it was by choice, and it was really to accelerate what we believe the market has already solidified as something that they want, and FTV has already been a great partner for us.
And one of the plans as well, you guys have quite a bit of penetration since being founded in 2022.
Yep.
You have 70 of the top 100 freight brokerages. You serve more than 1,050 brokers. Talk about some of this growth story. That's crazy stats if you think about 3 years now.
Yeah.
And for such a market penetration, I'm assuming the investment is a way to continue to kickstart that growth play.
Yeah. There's a couple of things. One, when we first came into the market, I can remember coming to the studio and talking to you about this early, the whole concept of carrier identity, which prior to Highway didn't really exist. And so what we did our best to introduce in the category is, hey, how do we take, KYC, KYB principles that have existed for years in finance and other areas and introduce them into the for-hire truckload sector? And we effectively did that. And so because there wasn't another solution, and because freight fraud was at an all-time high, we got pretty quick penetration, because the basic market need was like, hey, I need things to not be stolen. Like step one, let's not have things stolen. And then the interesting thing that we saw is that criminals didn't just go away. They didn't just say, oh, okay, we'll stop. The fraud vectors continue to change and move. So as a company, we had to get better about how we protect fraud and where the fraud vectors go. That got us into load level compliance. That got us into monitoring insurance exclusions. So it got us into building what have become entire business units around how a freight broker protects their network. And so, yeah, when you bring on a partner, you don't just get capital, but you get the scope of folks that have looked at other companies and that can really help you make sure that you're serving your customer well. You get a brain trust, because these guys are operating across other profitable portfolio companies that have gone where we're headed. And so you get to learn a lot and give the customer a better experience as a result.
And talking about customer experience, you also have recently launched the Trusted Freight Exchange to counter fraud and improve transparency. This is also together with Triumph. Let's talk about some of the output here. That's one of the fascinating things, because there's been so much fraud that having a trusted exchange, it kind of makes sense, but it's shocking that it's taken the industry, just like carrier identity, so long to finally come around and embrace the fact that we definitely need to know who the heck we're working with.
Yeah, the statement you made is really powerful, right? And which is, it makes sense, but it's taken a while. And why is that? And so what I would back up and tell you is that from the inception of Highway, this was always Jordan Graff's vision, is to create a safe and secure broker-focused exchange. But you can't do that when there's so much fraud, right? I mean, you think about, it's like you can't let everybody in the house and then say, okay, now that everybody's here, who's bad? You have to clean the house out first. And so the principal difference, and this is something that Jordan's really obsessed about, and you should get him on because he talks about this way better than I do. But an exchange doesn't think about being the answer, being the marketplace answer. What an exchange thinks about is like, hey, who's a producer? Who's a consumer, right? So in our world, a broker is a producer of freight, a carrier is a consumer of freight. And how do you create the rules that allow those participants to show up on equal footing, where they agree on the rules, And you're not trying to get in the middle of it. You're not trying to tell the broker you built a better mousetrap. You're trying to say, hey, we want to create an environment where you guys can show up and work and do work together. And if you do that, the carrier gets a lot of liquidity and the broker gets a lot more throughput, right? And that's the environment we hope to build.
And is it kind of like, for folks who are unfamiliar, I know that it feels like there's like three different tiers of load boards. You have your traditional load boards, like your DATs, your truck stops. They
Yeah.
are just very
Mhm.
transactional. You have third party load boards, kind of think of like a Transplace or a shipper's internal
Mhm.
one. Then you have internal brokerage ones. And then finally, even the carriers themselves have load boards. How does the Trusted Freight Exchange kind of fit in with this scheme? Because it does seem to be like it's got a brand new category. Because in the past, even if I had an internal load board with as a
Yep.
broker, I couldn't always validate. It was just people who have access. You got to log in.
It's-
Congratulations.
That's such a good question. I promise we didn't plan for this, but you're asking really good questions because that's the fundamental difference of an exchange. In an exchange, you're creating rails. So think about a Visa network or think about Stripe. Like anything that we interact with today, the exchange is the underlying network that empowers commerce. So with third-party load boards like a public load board, I think that'll always exist. I mean, look, Craigslist still exists today. I think you're always going to have the need for that. And then you talked about a couple different things. You talked about like a managed transload board. You talked about a large broker's private load board, or maybe a white label product that creates a private network for brokers. The exchange actually exists to empower that. So if you think about the experience of a motor carrier today, rather than having to log into 5 places and remember a username or password, or a broker having to think about security on all that, the carrier can log into the exchange via the sign in with Highway button. And that digital experience is actually going to deliver the carrier into that broker's load board. So the whole idea is that we disappear. The broker is the point, right? So if you're a large broker, you have your own load board, we're actually going to deliver that carrier securely right into your network, right? We're not going to try to charge you a transaction fee to go take care of it ourselves, because the way we view it is our job is to empower the broker.
And I think that's one of the great points is that if I'm a carrier, I'm always having to log into different things. Knowing that I'm doing everything right and that I'm trusted and validated can be a boon, because I can imagine that brokers in the past have used tier structures. Are you a platinum, a gold member? They have to
Yeah.
build that trust and then they finally give you access. So having the exchange kind of opens up more opportunities to folks who maybe are legit carriers, but I just hadn't run enough loads with you, but I'm integrated. My ELD's integrated. I'm legit. I got 2, 3, 4 factor
Yeah.
authentication. I'm just looking for opportunities. So it's a great way to help both parties,
Yeah.
brokers trying to find carriers and vice versa.
And you think about, so you bring up another good point. You think about 2 things. So am I a good carrier? Can I haul freight? That's a very yes, no question, right? If you're connected, if we verified your identity, if you have valid insurance, you can move freight. And you can move freight from maybe a very specific broker. But that broker may have shipper or business specific rules. So that's where you get into the tiering, right? Like, hey, I want to work with this carrier on all of these customers or on all of these origin destinations. But for this subset of customers, I need the carrier to have been with me a longer amount of time. I need them to have been in business a certain amount of time, have a certain amount of equipment, have certain types of insurance. We automate all of that for the broker. What does that mean? It means the carrier can understand what they can and can't haul and what they need to be able to do to haul things. And it also means they don't have to sift through noise. They don't have to sift through things that aren't pertinent to them, right? And so what it does is it creates a really, think about like the way that we just interact with e-commerce today, right? These sites tell us what we want to buy. They know us, right? And so it's about tailoring the experience to the carrier. Second thing it does for the carrier that's really important, carriers are defrauded every day because there are people that are impersonating brokers. The carrier doesn't know if they're getting paid. So part of the exchange, when we talk about participants showing up on equal footing, we're going to vet the broker. Like that broker has to be creditworthy. They have to pass a certain amount of standards too, because what we want to create in a conforming transaction is like, hey, motor carrier, if you book a load on the exchange, you're going to be paid. This is a valid, reputable broker. And so that's the North Star we're marching toward, right? That's kind of the future hope, is that when a carrier shows up, they know that load that they're booking is real and they will be paid. And that's where we need to probably bring Triumph into the conversation at some point. That's where they help us, right? That's where like that's not a highway thing. You need a really good category leading partner to do that, right? To be able to vet that broker and get involved in the financial settlement.
Well, let's
But
talk
but
about
that's something that a motor carrier deserves.
that's what I was curious about. Let's get this triumph factor in as well because how you're describing it, payment rail and trust, it reminds me. Craig Fuller in an interview talked about back in the e-commerce days, people were scared to put in your credit card number. They
Yeah.
said, "Don't go to this
Yeah.
website. Don't put, you may get scammed. It may be a bad website." So in the freight world, we're still operating in like the early 2000s where
Yeah.
I'm accepting this shipment. I don't know if it's actually if I'm going to get paid, like you said, due to the fraud. So is this kind of like modernizing and having Triumph in it as well as like building that trust? Because heck, I'll be honest, when I did operations, that's happened to me a few times. I booked a load off a load
Yeah.
board, got a rate con, and
Yeah.
3 months later, wrong guy.
Yeah. 100%. For one thing, inside or outside of the exchange, if you're a broker, you need to have your rate confirmation protected. The number one fraud vector right now is a compromised carrier's inbox, where a carrier doesn't even know that they've been compromised. But you talk about working for Craig. One of the things that he taught me when I worked for him that really stuck with me is like, you don't need to play in other people's category, right? And Highway's very good at what we do. I believe that in the things that Triumph does from a payments and credit perspective, like there's nobody in the space that does what they do the way they do as well as they do. And you don't want us making that decision, right? Like you want a trusted public bank that has to go through all of the compliance things that they go through making those decisions, right? So that's not like a highway call, right? So you're hanging up another partner that's saying, hey, they're going to come to the table and help make these representations to the motor carrier. And the other thing that's beautiful about that is, so for like if you're a Triumph Payments customer, that carrier is going to get paid really quickly because they have financial products that allow carriers to get paid right in their digital wallet. And when the transaction is what we call conforming, and this is not a highway thing. Like you can go Google what a conforming transaction is. You can speed up payments because you don't have to go through as many hoops to find out. Let's back up a second. Like when you were in operations, like it's weird that we wait until a load delivers to find out if the carrier actually hauled the load. Like that was the founding thesis of Highway was like, wait a minute. Why are brokers calling their payment provider to say, hold the payment because I'm not actually sure the carrier ran the load? So if you can produce with certainty that the motor carrier claiming to run the load did so, then that carrier should be paid as fast as possible. You shouldn't have any friction in between that.
I think that brings up you got a great point as well because if I'm a broker, I want to make sure my carrier is legit, but I also have to tell the customer. So there's three ways in the conversation and
Yeah.
having that validation and trust with Triumph. I'm curious as well. It's got to be an extra added dimension because Triumph has access to tons of payment data, can understand
Yeah.
sketchy transactions. Is there any opportunity where, like, let's say the carrier is signed up and everything, it can Triumph say, "Hey, Highway, guess what? One of these guys, there's some sketchy stuff. I've seen some weird payments. I've seen a weird bill
Yeah.
come in." Is that one of those opportunities as well where you've got Triumph providing the security and the authority to help guarantee the payments? Is there any kind of back and forth, or is it right now where you guys are validating and then Triumph is like guaranteeing it? How does that kind of work as well for folks?
Yeah, I mean, right now the way that it works is Highway owns the outcome of vetting the carrier's identity and their capability, and we do that in real time. So when we talk about capability, we think about their business capability in terms of their insurance, what their insurance allows them to haul, and the physical location of their vehicles, the type of equipment, what they can haul. So it's identity and capability, right, and who the user is. What Triumph owns is the validity and capability of the broker from a financial standpoint. Now, we do have a partnership with Triumph that's existed for a couple of years, where it's load limit data, where Triumph will evaluate the billing activity of a motor carrier against their known equipment, and we can see if that carrier is being paid for more trucks than they have, right? Like you can look at an equipment count and say, hey, like you can't run this many miles in a 2-week period with 3 trucks. So that already has existed for quite some time. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
Yeah. Well, it does because a lot of this stuff, especially with power units and stuff, that's all self-reported. So it's kind of like I can tell you I
Yeah.
got 100 trucks or 1,000 drivers in one truck, and the FMCSA's database is like, okay, this is cool. So let's talk about. We got a little bit of time left. Some of the big fraud trends, some of the big stuff. You all recently had your freight fraud index report out of Q2. So there's a lot of instances why highways platform is important. And one of the things that blew my mind was you mentioned compromised inboxes. I had no idea that according to your data in Q2, you flagged and dropped nearly 500,000 fraudulent email attempts.
Yep.
Is that something where being in the biz and seeing these developments, is it really that widespread? Because that's an insane factoid.
Yeah, I'm going to make a really bold statement that I'm willing to stand behind. If you are sending rate confirmations in an email with a PDF attached, your loads will be stolen. Full stop.
Oh, wow. Because I could be in the
And
inbox and I could
so,
just download it and send it to another carrier.
and that's what they do. And so think about, well, what they want is they just want to see the load data to be able to go steal it. So if I can get, and a lot of carriers, especially small ones, they're moving quickly or they're on their phone, and they're not monitoring their inbox. So what happens is the motor carrier gets phished, and the bad actor is just in the inbox, and they're sending emails and then deleting the sent item, and then they're doing things that the real carrier doesn't know they're doing. And they only need a split second of time. And once they get an address, a pickup number, and a commodity, they're going to go steal that load. And so this is completely preventable. And Thomas, think about it this way. If your lender or your doctor or anybody sent you something sensitive and it was just attached to an email, like your accountant won't even send you your tax return in an insecure email. Does that make sense? Like when my accountant sends me my known email address, I have to put in a code even to access the PDF. The idea that in the year 2025, we send out information about hundreds of thousands of dollars of cargo attached to a PDF in an email blows me away.
It's like I
Just
need
think about that.
multi-factor. So it's like I want to order something on Amazon. I need like multi-factor authentication just to buy my tube of
Yes.
toothpaste. But whenever we tender
Brother,
the
you
load,
can't get into your Netflix account when you travel without more security than we use for rate confirmations. And so the
yeah,
thing is, it's so easy. And carriers love it because they know it's a real rate con. And for a motor carrier that's signed in with Highway, and by the way, we do this 30,000 times a day. It feels just like your Google right now on your machine. Like I had to use a Chrome browser to get in here. I got a JSON token that's open that just keeps me logged in. I may be speaking computer wrong. I think that's what it's called. I think it's JSON. But anyway, most carriers, they're signing into Highway multiple times a day to get to brokers. So when they get that Raycon email, they just click the retrieval button. It runs that SSO link. And if a bad actor gets that, we catch the bad actor because they can't get it. And then we have the data on the bad actor and we shut them down and we hit the red button. It's so much fun. So much fun busting bad guys. If you're a carrier and you're getting a rate confirmation that's a PDF, you should be scared.
I like that. That's a powerful persuasion play because when I was a broker in 19, that was the weirdest thing in the world coming from a US Express where I'm emailing a specific person, I'm tendered via EDI, it just shows up in the system. And I'm like, "Wait, we're just sending like an email with load details or I'm just getting like a PDF." It's like, "Yeah, so I mean this
Yeah.
guy can call in and he can say, "Yeah, my MC number is 1112515." And they're like,
Yeah.
"All right, Thomas, that's you." And I was like, "This is kind of weird that it's like
Yeah.
$100,000 worth of shipment and some jabroni's just calling in and like, all right, he's
Yeah,
cool."
exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah, man, it's good. I promise. It's fine. I pick this load up all the time. And they're very good at conning their way into a freight broker and having that conversation. Like these are professional criminals. They're not going to go away. And this isn't. Look, you have the. I think you have the index report there. This is in the data. This isn't like me making something up. Like when we look at theft events, the number one vector is the carrier's compromised inbox.
wow. And let's look ahead here while we got a little bit of time left. As we're seeing this increase, we saw from Q1 to Q2 there was a 37% increase in call fraudulent inbound calls. You all identified and blocked over 42,000 fraudulent inbound calls. What are some of the things that you all are keeping an eye out? Is there anything coming across the horizon in terms of fraud or fraudsters people need to be aware of in addition to never trusting a PDF? Talk about
Yeah.
some of that real quick before we wrap up.
The main thing I would say where the most common vectors, the most common points of exposure, are going to be the communication points, because highways are very secure. So like the number one way that we block those fraudulent calls, by the way, is with partnerships with agentic AI vendors, where they're making sure that their AI isn't going rogue and talking to a bad actor, right? And so they're using our data to actually keep the call volume clean. But that's what I would tell you is just like scams that happen on your phone, where someone calls and tells you you're the IRS and you got to pay something. They are trying to reach the broker or the carrier outside of a secure communication channel, like an email or a phone. So you always have to watch those things. And then the other one that's like the silent killer is the quote unquote sold MC. That's not a legitimate sale. It's not a legitimate sold MC number, but it is a bad actor giving another motor carrier money to assume control of that MC. And what they really want is not the MC number as much as they want to act like that MC and get into, they want the login credentials.
Yep.
So what comes with that is I'm now going to try to log in. Now, so what does that mean? So digitally, that's synthetic fraud. We're looking for digital patterns where we're like, all this pattern equals sold MC, and we're able to do that. And so that's kind of the silent killer. And so those are the two big points I would tell you, right? In addition to the email thing, it's your communication channels, right? Where someone's going to use voice or email to try to gain information, or they're going to try to look like a carrier that's been in your network for a long time, but really they bought access to everything that MC had access to.
That kind of ties into to get more info about the Trusted Freight Exchange, because I knew that IP address from Moldova would have been suspicious. And so, Michael, thank you so much for hopping on the show. Folks want to learn more about the Trusted Freight Exchange, about what Highway's working on. What is the best way to get more info?
Yeah, highway.com. It's real easy. It's a great website. It's there. Links. Just click it and somebody gets you. Or you can email me, michael@highway.com. I'm happy to help. And it's good talking to you today, man. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Definitely always a pleasure catching up. We'll have to hit y'all up again soon. I know Q3 is coming up. We got some more freight fraud and stuff, and super excited to see what y'all are working on next as well.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's good seeing you both.